Hi, I'm Madison and welcome back to my channel. Today I have my January reading wrap up. So the month of January was a really stellar reading month. Like I read so many good books. I read a couple of ones, but I read some of the books that I read in January without a doubt will be in my top 10 of 2023 already. I'm so lucky. It's not even funny. I am dead over this. I read 11 books in the month of January. 3 of them were adult and 8 of them were new adult. That is 7, that is not 8. And 10 of them were ebooks and 1 of them was a physical book. I was very ebook heavy in January. Now when it comes to genres, I'm a little bit iffy for this month because it's a little confusing. So I know for sure, like 100%, I read 3 Omegaverses and 2 contemporary romances. Now where it gets difficult is I read, if you have paid attention to my channel, the entire Bonds That Tie series by J Bree, and to be flat out honest, I don't know what fucking genre that is. I don't. I've sat here, I'm like, it's like it's a reverse harem, like it's a why choose romance. It's dystopian with like fantasy elements to it, and it's new adult, but like, is it like an urban fantasy? But like, it's not really urban fantasy, it's dystopian, you know? So therefore the genres this month are 3 Omegaverse, 2 contemporary romances, and 6 whatever you classify the Bonds That Tie series by J Bree as. Okay, good, moving forward. As per normal, I'm going to be starting with my lowest rated books and working up to my highest rated books. My lowest rated book for this month was actually Tristan the Dark by Grace McGinty. This is an Omegaverse that I gave 3 out of 5 stars to. Read it entirely on the airplane. I think it was fine. I just didn't really feel much of a connection between her and her pack, to be quite honest. Like, there was just a lot missing, and like some of them I was okay with, and it was just okay. And like I'm getting to the point now where I'm like getting to be like a little bit of like an Omegaverse connoisseur, so I can afford to be a little bit like, yo, this was average and this was average. So this is book 1 in the like lottery universe, where basically Omegas, I remember why I didn't like this that much. This was also dystopian, which is the first time I've read an Omegaverse that was dystopian as well, which is a little bit strange too. So it was like a kind of a whole different vibe for Omegaverse, and that also was like a little bit strange for me. But set in a world where Omegas are in like a lottery, so once you hit like a certain age, you were then part of the lottery, and then basically all the single alphas and beta men in the world as well are in the lottery, and every week you get like a little, when it's your turn, you basically like picking a name out of a hat and surprise, that's your pack mate, congratulations, is how it works. And so you're following this girl who, I don't remember her name to be quite honest, and I'm not looking up her name because meh. She doesn't want to be an Omega to get this. She tries to run away like a bunch of times. When the book starts off, they have literally imprisoned her so that she cannot run away from the lottery. And she gets the first guy who's in her lottery, and it's this really nice beta guy. They hit it off, but the beta guy, it turns out, was actually in a relationship with another guy, and then that other guy, you know, breaks into the house and kind of asks if he can join the pack because he doesn't want to be away from the guy, and so she ends up agreeing to be with him. But it's also like a weird like CNC kind of thing that was going on a little bit at the beginning as well, which is kind of strange. It was really weird. And then like the rest of our alphas get introduced, and they're all alphas, but they're all really different. Like one of them's like this bad boy mafia motorbike guy who I really liked. I liked him, and his connection with the girl I thought was the strongest, just saying. And then there was like this really douchebaggy like alpha guy who's like the most richest tech dude alpha, who was like legit awful. And then there were like these twins, although one of them was a beta, one of them was an alpha, which is kind of interesting. I don't know, it was fine. It was like weird because of the dystopian aspect of it as well, so there was like weird dystopian things that were going on too, and I just really wasn't feeling it. Like, even sitting here thinking about it, I'm like, wow, it feels like a fever dream, to be quite honest with you. Like, it had a lot of potential. I just think that the execution just wasn't there. So I would definitely read more in this series and more of like the lottery books, but this first one just wasn't it for me. And I mean, maybe like my guess is that the author probably gets better like as she writes these subsequent books. I will, like I said, continue on, but yeah, the first one just didn't do it for me. It got really, really weird towards the end. Like that was some, I'm not gonna say what happens, but it gets weird towards the end. I was like, oh, okay, this is a lot. So if you know, you know. Oh, I did like her bodyguard though. He was bomb babe. He was a bomb babe. So next up we have my 4-star reads, and this is actually a Omegaverse duet. It is the Not Their Toy duet by AJ Merlin. The first book is Vile Boys and the second one is Wicked Girl. So this is a new adult college bully Omegaverse romance. And I know you're probably thinking, Madison, haven't you said before that you're not that into bully romance as well? I'm lied, like I always do. I lie very often on this channel by saying I don't like things, and then I read things about those things and I love them, and so, you know, life. This was actually so much fun. If you are looking for a Omegaverse duet just to like lose yourself in and binge and like forget about everything, this is definitely it. Very anti-slumpy. I used it and it was like the perfect escape from like life. Legit, I had a lot of shit going on when I read this and it was like the best thing ever. So you follow Mercy Noble. She's just started at Winter Grove University. She's an Omega, but she's kind of like a boss-ass bitch Omega. She's like, I know my worth. I'm not going to just like bend over and present for like the first alpha that comes by me. Like, I don't care if I have to be picky. I will be picky because I know what I deserve. And I was like, yes, you go, girl. However, on the first day of class, you know how you know how in Twilight there's that scene where Bella walks in Bella's hair like with the fan and the scent, and then, you know, Edward is there and he's like, oh, because he's like, and she thinks, oh my god, he thinks I smell bad, but it's actually because she smells so good that he's like gagging. So that happens in this, but it's Mercy instead, and the guy is Dorian. So Mercy's in class, Dorian, he walks in, she whiffs his scent and it's so attractive to her that she gags. And he is like top shit dog of this school, Dorian is, and he thinks that she's like actually offended by his smell and decides to kind of like, you know, he gets kind of shitty with her after that, but doesn't bully her because of that. No, he ends up bullying her because Mercy finds out that Dorian and his 2 packmates like top to the school, and when this one guy starts harassing her and won't leave her alone, she ends up blurting out that she is actually part of Dorian's pack and that Dorian is like courting her to be like his Omega. And this gets back to Dorian, and Dorian's like, hey, you can't do that shit, like that's not cool. And when she refuses to like apologize and like beg for his forgiveness, he decides to make her life a living hell. And it's her and the 3 guys. It was absolutely phenomenal. I loved all of the guys equally. It is also does have MM aspects as well in this duet, so it's everyone with everyone, a little bit of everything. And what's really cool is everyone kind of has their own kinks. Now, if you are not into pet play is in this. Now, it is pet play, but not in the way, like, I feel like sometimes you see, I can't believe I have this conversation right now. It's not pet play in a weird way. So I feel like sometimes when people think of pet play being in a book, they expect the person to like be sitting there and like barking or meowing. Whereas it seems like what I'm learning, at least when I'm reading this, and don't like quote me on this because I haven't actually done research on pet play because that's not what I do in my spare time. But from the books that I've read where they list pet play, I'm gonna cry. I can't even. I'm sorry. From the books that I have read where they, I can't even do this. Okay. From the books that I have read where they list pet play in the kink warnings, the consistency is normally like a collar. Sometimes a collar with a leash is like what's going on, and maybe cat ears, maybe. And that's like it. Normally it is to do with like a collar and a leash is like pet play, which I didn't know. But now that I think about it, that does make sense because a pet, you put it. Anyway, I thought pet play was like legit, like pet, like more like, I thought it was like an extreme version of it, but this is more of like a light version. All of that to say, there are multiple different kinks within this. It is very fun with the kinks that are in it as well. Definitely massive dom sub vibes throughout this too. Definitely recommend it. The main plot of this also does have a murder, like people start getting murdered on campus in the first book, which is also a subplot. And then the second book, the subplot there is someone shitty comes to the school who has like a vengeance against one of the guys in the pack, okay, and is like trying to kill him. So you kind of got some extra things in there. Also, Mercy is an archer. She does archery, and she's like a really boss-ass bitch in that way. So basically, I really enjoyed this and thought it was a really fun, unique Omegaverse series. So if you haven't checked it out, do it. Okie dokie. Now we have my 4.5 star read, and now we have a book that I can actually physically show you, and that is going to be Terms and Conditions by Lauren Asher. I loved this. I really did. I read this on my way to the airport and on the airplane, and this was like the perfect read for that. I think, well, actually my flight was delayed by 45 minutes, so I'd already come down to the gate, was there waiting, and then they go, sorry, it's gonna be 45 minutes. I go, great. So then I'm sitting there in front of all these random humans on my Kindle reading this book, smiling like a dumbass. I'm like this. You know? No one wants to see that. This was hilarious shit. Lauren Asher has some of the funniest books that I love them. Her books will always make you smile without a doubt. So in this one, you're following Declan and Iris. For Declan to inherit his fortune from his grandfather's will in order to become the CEO of Dreamland, he needs to get married and have a baby within a certain period of time. So when the book starts off, his assistant has been trying to find him the perfect wife, and it starts off on the night that he's supposed to have his engagement announcement party, except for the fact that he goes to finally meet his soon-to-be betrothed wife, and he scares her off again. And there's nothing left, there's no time, he has to go out and make this announcement. And so Iris is like, okay, you know what, there's nothing left to do, I'll be your wife. We've kept it a secret, no one knows who your wife was supposed to be, so it'll make sense that we kept it such a big secret because it's me, your assistant, that's why you want to keep it a secret. He goes, we're not doing this. She goes, well, too bad, so sad, I've been trying for months to find your wife, you can't figure it out, therefore you're getting me. And so they end up embarking on this fake engagement that turns into a fake marriage, and it is so much fun. It's so hilarious because they both are like, at the beginning of this, it is friends to lovers, although like reluctant friends, because she's like, yeah, we're friends, and he goes, no, we're not friends, and she goes, but we are, and he's like, we're not. So I think that they are friends to lovers, and so it starts off with them not thinking that they have a sexual attraction to one another, and they just think that they're friends, and like, oh, it's fine, nothing will ever happen. And then the sexual tension starts like creeping in and creeping in and creeping in. Like the sexual tension, the building of it in this, delicious. It was so good, so much fun. The only thing that really frustrated me was the same thing as what frustrated Iris, which was the fact that Declan is so focused on his dad being such a shitty person and not wanting to become his dad, and, you know, it's a plot line that you see a lot in historical romances, and it's one of my least favorite plot lines in historical romances, is when the guy is so focused on not becoming his dad and not doing things for his dad that he ends up treating the heroine shit because of his sole focus on his dad and not caring about how the heroine might actually feel on the side. And so that's also a plot in this, which is the reason why it's sort of 4 or 5 stars. That's just a trope that it's just not one of my favorites. Even though I read it all the time, it's something that I just don't like it. But otherwise, it was phenomenal. It was so much fun. It was sexy too, not like super spicy, but like a good solid amount of spice, and it was just really great time. And this is definitely one of my favorite like marriage and convenience romances. 100% do recommend. Okay, now for my 5-star reads. I'm going to basically lump all of the Bonds That Tie series together as one gigantic 5-star read. They were like fluctuating each book between a 4 to a 5-star read, but ultimately the series is 5 stars. I think only one of the books I would give a 4, and then a lot of them were either 4.5 or 5 stars. However, I will say my favorite book out of the entire series is book 5, which is Tragic Bonds. Oh my god. It was so amazing, so phenomenal, like I can't even. This series, it's set in a world where there are people who are gifted and ungifted. Now, ungifted, obviously people without magic. Gifted, people with magic. Now, magic can be, if you're a shifter, if you have elemental magic, you can have telekinesis, technokinetics, there's death dealers, there's like all different kinds of magic. You really only have like one set magic, and then you can have like little things like that's kind of subsect off of that. I'm not going to get into it, but it's really cool. Now, the people who are gifted are also, there are people called bonds and central bonds, okay? And it's kind of Omegaversy in that way, where it's kind of like the central bond is almost like the Omega, And then the bonds are like the alphas, okay? But the way to determine who your bonds are is through blood work. So you're like fated with who you're supposed to be with. So it's kind of like fey mates, where when you meet your person, it's almost like a mating bond like snaps into place like mentally between the two of you. So that's like, oh my God, like we're meant to be, like that's how you can tell if you don't get the blood work, like that's how you know who your bonds are. And in order to cement the bonds between the central bond and the bond, they have to have sex, and sex is what makes you bonded, with like an ED, bonded, okay? So you are following Ollie, and she is a central bond, but she has been on the run for the last 5 years from her bonds. Okay, and now her 5 bonds are ᴛᴏᴏᴅ, who is the head of the West Coast, like, gifted people. His younger brother, ᴛᴏᴏᴅ, who is a professor at Draven University. Then you have Griffin. He is the head of one of the tactical teams, so kind of like the gifted people's army. But they're not that big that it wouldn't be called an army. It's more of like a spec ops team. Why am I getting so specific? Then you have Gabe, and he is a shifter and a football player at Draven University. And lastly, you have Atlas, and he is attending university on the East Coast, and his family is part of the East Coast Gifted Council, okay? When the book starts off, the TAC team ends up finally tracking down her and capturing her and forcing her to basically get like a GPS tracker chip that will explode if she tries to take it out, and she ends up having to actually finally meet her bonds and attend Draven University because of them, okay? And so you end up finding out that, you know, she's attending this university, she doesn't want to be there, she doesn't want to be around her bonds. Her bonds all hate her because she ran away, and they don't know why she ran away. She doesn't hate them, but knows that they hate her because she can't tell them why she ran away. And the reason why she's been on the run is because she is being hunted by this other group of people called the Resistance. And so that's the reason why she's on the run, but she can't tell them that because they won't believe her. And so that is kind of what this series is about. It's about her and her bonds and their relationship, plus the Resistance, and kind of what they mean in relation to Ollie and to her powers, because her powers to us as the reader are currently a secret, because she has to keep them a secret because it's so dangerous that if she uses her power at all, the Resistance will find her again and basically track her down again. And that's who she's trying to avoid, because she doesn't want everyone else to get hurt around her because of the Resistance, because they're trying to basically do bad shit. So I think that's the best way for me to explain this series very loosely. I adored the shit out of it. Without giving anything else away, my favorite characters were easily Gabe and Knox. They were the best of the guys in the group. Oh my God. There is a CNC scene in the first book. Please do be aware of that. And later on in the series, there is mentions of childhood trauma as well as childhood molestation, okay? So do know that as 2 triggers, because I feel like I never see anyone talk about either of them for how popular the series is. Therefore, it is my job to tell you guys, because you know me, I always share the triggers for books unless they're like super spoilery. I will always share those. So I love it, highly recommend it. Please check it out, because I would literally get the whole series like 12 stars out of 5 if I could, and it wasn't like technically incorrect. That's that. Okay, the last book. Losers Part 2 by Harley Laroux. You guys knew this was coming. If you saw Losers Part 1, it was one of my top books of 2022. Losers was just amazing in general, and this is Part 2 of it, so of course it was also 5 stars. This is an amazing duet. They are big books, but they're totally worth it. This is by far one of the kinkiest books I've ever read in my entire life, this duet, but it is also really amazing in the way that it kind of presents kink, in the sense of kind of exploring who you are as a person and kind of growing as a person as well, which I thought was really interesting and not something that I have really ever seen before. This series, you have Jessica. She was the queen bee in high school. She used to bully these 4 guys. This takes place after college, when she has returned back to her hometown because she's going to be working remotely for an internship until she can land a full-time job and move out of her parents' place and out of town again. While she is back in town, her car ends up breaking down, and when it breaks down, she ends up getting it fixed by Manson. Now, Manson is one of the 4 guys that she used to bully in high school, and when she cannot afford to actually pay to fix the car, he ends up entering into a game with her, into a deal. And that deal is that until the car is fixed, she will pay them back by basically becoming their submissive. Which I said before, it sounds like almost like a bad porno, like, oh no, my car broke down, how will I ever fix it, mechanic? And the mechanic goes, you can pay with it with your body, but it's better. Why did I do that? I question some of the shit that comes out of my mouth sometimes, but I also don't regret it. This is an amazing book. I love it to shit. Manson is one of my favorite characters of all times. I love all these guys, to be quite honest. And one thing I did not tell you guys, and I forgot to say this about part 1 in the duet, is the fact that part 1 of the duet has a scene where there's like it's sexy video game playing, okay? Which I'm always a fan of sexy video game playing. So this is an amazing duet. If you like dark romances, please pick this up. This is a dark romance just because there is a lot of like dark shit that does end up going on further down the line, and because of just everything that kind of goes on with like the CNC and like things like that. So do know that. But I love this series to death. Please do check it out. It's one of my all-time favorites, and I could not read about it more. I feel like you guys have heard me talk about Losers Part 1, so I don't need to go too much more into detail for this one, but yes. I can't wait to see what else Harley Laroux puts out next, because she is quickly becoming one of my favorite all-time authors, hands down, so yeah. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please let them down below. If you want to see more of me, please go to my channel, and until next time, thanks so much everyone. Bye-bye.